presentation I hear for him, so.
Well, where's Rich? Because I texted him.
Good evening. This is the Plan Commission for Evanston, and it is 5 after 7. I think we have a quorum. We do have a quorum. And the first item of business is the minutes from our last meeting. Is there a motion or correction, or do you need another minute or two to pull them up on your computers? Yeah. So we could have a motion if there are no corrections.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and second simultaneously. And any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
A motion. The minutes are approved. The next item of business is a text amendment to the zoning ordinance.
Do we have a new member?
We do, and
I think that would
we'll
be the next
introduce
order
her.
of business.
Thank you. We have a new member, Melanie Johnson, who distinguishes herself by not being an attorney, but is an engineer, and we welcome you.
We're slowly infiltrating the commission. And non-attorneys.
I didn't say everyone was an attorney, but there certainly are a lot of us.
Just not distinguished.
Too many of us.
Distinguished.
So if we can go to the next item, if it's okay.
That's fine. I just wanted to know
Seth
what
approves
it's
going
about.
to the next item, text amendment 13
Welcome.
PLND 0015, and that's a consideration of a text amendment pursuant to the City Code Title 6 regarding regulations for landscape waste recycling transfer facilities and adding them as special uses in the I-3 General Industrial District. We'll start with staff.
Good evening, Melissa Klotz, zoning planner. Following the March 20th zoning committee of the Plan Commission meeting, both staff and the zoning committee recommend approval of landscape waste recycling transfer facilities as a special use in the I-3 zoning district, along with the implementation of a zoning definition for the use. We recommend it as a special use in the I-3 district so that the city has purview over any specific site and specific applicant and can make sure that things such as hours of operations, nuisance issues, and land use with regards to adjoining properties or nearby properties are all compatible with that use. Specifically, there's only one I-3 district in the city, and it is off of Oakton Avenue, and the nearest residential district is approximately 400 feet from the I-3 district. However, most of the I-3 district is more like 1,000 or more feet from that area. Now, the proposed definition was discussed at length at the zoning committee, and there is now a new definition that is proposed that brings together the Illinois EPA definition as well as a discussion of a 24-hour limitation that also specifically states that 24 hours or another time period as designated by the Illinois EPA to allow for slightly longer time limits on weekend hours. Additionally, a change to the definition allows that mechanical facilities that are incidental in nature may be used so that items such as wood chipping machinery can be utilized. This text amendment was brought about by applicants Jim Seckelman and Scott Scholler of JNS LLC, who are interested in running a facility that would bring together both a landscape sales and the landscape waste recycling transfer station, where it would be a combination of the two uses so that smaller landscaping companies would come into the facility, drop off old grass clippings, bushes, that type of waste, which would remain on the site for approximately 24 hours before being transferred out to a recycling center. And then at the same time, those small landscapers could then pick up items such as mulch and other wholesale items before they leave the facility. And with that, I will turn it over to the applicants.
Before you start, could you identify yourself?
I just want to make sure, can everyone see this here, or do I need to put it anywhere special for a camera or anything?
We are actually being filmed. Camera is there, I think.
Yeah.
Here?
There's,
So there may be no way to succeed
Okay.
unless you put it sort of over there.
good evening. Okay, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jeremiah X. Savage. I work with Rolf C. Campbell & Associates, Manhard Consulting. I'm a consulting planner to a number of municipalities. My firm represents over 12 municipalities as planning and zoning administrators, as well as working as planners and designers for private developers. I would ask the chairman if we need to be sworn in, the petitioners this evening, since this is a public hearing.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth?
I do. Okay, if I could have the applicants come up and I'll introduce them also here briefly. Scott Scholler owns and operates Contour Landscaping in Skokie, Illinois. Jim Seckelman operates the Mulch Center, which has offices and facilities in Deerfield and also near Lake Bluff for mulch producing as well as landscape material sales.
And let the record show they've both been sworn.
As I was stating, we represent a number of clients. This is a use that we've represented in a number of our municipalities. Staff has reviewed what we're pursuing. That's a text amendment to add to the I-3 district the use of landscape waste transfer station. As staff pointed out, the only I-3 district in the whole city is limited to an area just north of Oakton, right next to the canal. This is the only I-3 district in the whole city, just to repeat that. It is the most intensive district also in your zoning code. Permitted by right already there right now is automobile body repairs establishments, automobile repair shops, heavy manufacturing, industrial service establishments, ready-mix concrete, recycling center, which we are similar used to, as well as vehicle salvage. In the area right now, presently, there is a vehicle salvage yard, as well as a ready-mix concrete plant just north of the potential subject site that my applicants own. My client's own. As for the text amendment, we just went over where it would be located. The landscape waste transfer station is a use regulated by the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. They do issue permits for this, but unlike other pollution control facilities and solid waste management facilities, they defer to the local jurisdiction, municipality, to provide zoning control over it. So landfills are controlled by the state at a higher level for most times, for permits and things of that nature. This one is deferred back to the municipality. Basically how it works is a business comes in, or a landscape contractor comes in, drops off the waste. It is crushed or compacted, put on into another bigger truck and transferred off site to be recycled as mulch, as compost and things of that nature. As staff pointed out, no composting will take place on this site. It's said in the definition explicitly. So if anyone in the audience is worried about composting and things of that nature, that is already being addressed. This site will be in combination with the landscape sales yard. Pretty much these go hand in hand. Landscape contractor will come in with a truck full of waste, dump that off for pickup and removal, and then load up with more products such as mulch, stone, and things of that nature. So those are extra bins that will be on there. The stuff can only be held on site pretty much for 24 hours before it has to be transferred off. There may be some exceptions to that, but the hard limit pretty much on the IEPA is off-site within 24 hours. All materials will be covered that are going to be transferred before being transferred off-site. And there's also potential, if any concerns of odor arise, things of that nature, there is a chemical agent that is authorized by the IEPA that can be sprayed on it to control odor. Just to point out, the I-3 compared to this use, I've already listed some of the more intensive uses, but near your I-3 district, it's fairly well buffered. You have the canal on the west side. You have the existing Home Depot with its garden center actually abutting right next to where my applicant owns the site. Commercial use to the north, I-2 zoning, to the east over here, as well as ready-mix concrete and some other commercial uses down here. So it's fairly well isolated. I'd also point out the community gardens are down here and the former recycling center for the village, or for the city of Evanston also. These are all uses that potentially could also use this recycling facility's transfer station. You know, waste from the community gardens could be used and deposited here to be processed off-site. Just as an example of the synchronicity of this area. The particular site is approximately 20,000 square feet. You have an example site plan of how it's going to be laid out. All concreted, existing use right now. There's an additional site that's across the street that's of limited nature that would be used for parking potentially, or storage of covered goods and things of that nature. In terms of compatibility, we'll review some of the standards briefly with respect to your text amendment. The first one would be compatibility with your general plan. This is an area that is designated for industrial use on your general plan presently. It's also designated for an area to revitalize and add more jobs and employment uses, continue as that use. This site also does promote sustainability. It encourages people to bring in recyclable material and get it out of the waste stream, namely organic goods that would go to landfills. This takes it out of that waste stream cycle, processes it, and reuses it in your city presently. Compatibility with the character of the area, I've already gone over some of the similar uses. This is much of a less intense use compared to the other permitted uses in the district. In terms of adverse effects on adjacent property values.
This is a map amendment. I'm sorry, this is not a map amendment, this is a text amendment.
Correct.
You'll get to talk about adjacent properties and the specific site at the special use hearing.
Okay.
I mean, we're happy to hear it, but we're really looking at authorizing this as a special use in the whole district.
Okay, and I was just going through your application. These were listed as the
Sure.
standards in the application. So I will skip ahead. Finally, to public facilities.
It's up to you to put in what you want.
Okay, I will just finish out then. Like I say, in adverse effects, we've already listed some of the character of the area. This is less intense. We don't propose we don't project any effect on property values. And finally, public facilities, impact on public facilities. The site doesn't have public facilities presently that'll impact sewer and water. It can accommodate those on site with a tank and also porta-john. And this is a private road going from Oakton northward, so it won't impact the actual infrastructure of the roadways directly adjacent to it. Finally, getting to your question of the permitted and special use question. Out of deference for staff, we initially requested the special use because they recommended it. We feel that this is a limited area, so we would ask for your consideration as a potential permitted use in the I-3 district. It's the only I-3 district.
We'd have to renotice it.
You would have to renotice it. Okay. I just wanted to highlight that. Just to talk about, some of the timing of it with staff. We submitted back in August. It took 3 months for the zoning analysis. When we submitted for this application in December, it took another 3 months for this hearing. So we were just moving it along, and the special use we were anticipating would take another 3 months to get open for the season. So with that, I will turn it over to you for any questions you have of me or the applicants.
Go ahead, Mr. Ford.
Is this taking place on a pad or in a building?
As far as,
If you could say your name also.
my name's Scott Scholler. I'm the owner of the property. As far as the waste transfer, this would be in a covered area,
Okay.
and that would be according to the IEPA requirements.
Okay, thank you. And now, I understand you to say that this is being baled, in effect? You say compacted.
What happens is when materials come to the site, if it's wood waste, which isn't considered as the EPA definition of landscape waste, wood waste like branches and brush and logs, they would be processed into a smaller form, processed so that it could be hauled away
Okay.
for that case. The actual landscape waste, which would be grass clippings and things of that nature, that would not be processed on the site. That would be transferred to a compost facility, and that's where they would actually change it into compost. And that would not be what we're doing on the site here.
Yeah, I understand.
It's just the transferring of it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, my name is Jim Suckelman. I'm the owner of the Mulch Center. I think when he mentioned compacted, we have a big tractor, and it, compacts the yard waste, landscape waste, and then it's taken away, so it gives us the availability to put more on a truck and less traffic on the roadways.
I have a question. Sorry.
In our zoning meeting, I think there was testimony, or it may have just been a comment, that there are no other facilities in Evanston that enable this type of service, that offer this type of service. Is that true?
As a primary or principal use, that is correct. There may be some other facilities that do some incidental landscape waste collection, but because it's incidental in nature, it would not be affected by this.
There is one that I'm referring to. I don't know if I can mention names, but it's the one on Main Street, which is a retail plus a facility that sells mulch to landscapers. I've did some research, and apparently they accept collection of yard waste. I asked my landscaper last week and said, "Where do you take your mulch? Do you have to go far?" And he told me he drops everything off at that facility that I just referenced. I don't understand how that's, because it seems that you're also this service is also, you'll be selling as well. So you'll be selling the same type of things that this other establishment sells. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So why does this other establishment have a special use to collect yard waste? And if not, should they be, and are they covered by the EPA, and do they have to go through the same things?
Yeah, if I could respond to that. Dennis Marino, Manager of Planning and Zoning for the city. We have looked at that facility and certainly know of its existence since at least 1994. Our research has also indicated that there was a landscape contractor on that site going all the way back to at least 1986. And clearly the principal use on that site and of that business, certainly since 1994, has been retail sales of landscaping materials and sort of any handling of yard waste. From our point of view, has been incidental to the principal activity, the primary use being the retail sales, consistent with what Melissa Klotz said a few minutes ago. Also, it was legally established over 20 years ago, and from that point of view, it also, in terms of our standard zoning practice, is not affected by new text amendments to the zoning ordinance. It also is not a it's not the scale in any way, shape, or form of a waste recycling facility, which is what's proposed here. What we've been doing is working with this applicant to try and move them along as quickly as possible. We certainly worked with them over the last 60 days to get them open as a wholesale supplier of landscaping materials. But as you know from our recommendation, we feel that, as does the law department, that this very much needs to be a special use in terms of their handling of landscape waste, which very much is, if not the principal activity, is a co-principal activity. But our feeling is that what they're proposing is very well suited for the I-3 site, and we would encourage you to recommend approval, and then we'd like to move forward very quickly with a special use application and process as well.
So the question I have about the EPA requirements for the other facility, do they apply there as well?
I don't know the full scope of IEPA requirements. I'm not aware of that being a licensed IEPA facility, but I think what I'm indicating is that they're very different business models, very different business enterprises, very different uses. In terms of the principal use at the facility, the site you're referring to, Commissioner Friedman, is really that of retail sales.
I understand it's a site of retail sales, but it is also a recycling of yard waste. And it seems to me that if it might be a separate issue, it's a separate issue from whether or not you move forward. And in zoning, I support it, and I continue to support and encourage and would like to see you be able to open tomorrow if we could have that happen. Okay, so this is independent of that, but I'm surprised that from what I heard in the zoning meeting that there wasn't another facility, and then that drivers or yard waste have to drive to, pretty far away, maybe 40 minutes, and that there's one in our backyard that either Evanston doesn't, since I understand it's not the primary use, but I have a feeling that's where most yard contractors go with their waste.
Could you and Dennis discuss that?
Sure.
outside of the
I just want to make sure that that's not coming under the radar, that EPA doesn't know about it, and that we're not being even-handed on requirements for one business versus another. That's all.
We appreciate your concerns, Commissioner. We had similar issues with the permitted versus special use, and we defer to staff on the enforcement issues as far as our business versus other people's business.
Did you have a question also?
Actually, just in terms of the benefit of this use, I was wondering if, because the city and its contractors probably is one of the biggest generators of yard waste with all the tree trimming, et cetera, where do those trucks go currently?
And actually, Mr. Seckelman here has as a client the city of Evanston, and he can tell you a little bit more about that.
How far away is that, and what are the benefits of having it closer?
Well, currently, and we've been working with Mark Unger, the city forester, for probably 8-10 years even. The wood waste that goes in over at Mount Trashmore, primarily wood chips we grind up, and our firm hauls some of those away, takes them to another site, and sells them for mulch, and then the city utilizes some of those. Last year, we have a machine that took a lot of the ash trees and diseased elm trees, ground this up, screened it, and brought it down to an acceptable size where it won't impact healthy trees, and made a certified playground mulch for the city. And we'd love to do that again.
I'm sorry, that's happening at Mount Trashmore?
Yeah, at
currently?
Mount Trashmore, yeah.
So if, assuming that you obtain approval, would that process be moved over to the new site?
No, I don't think we have the room there to do that, but at Mount Trashmore, that facility where the logs are and the wood chips, there's room at that site. I'd love the city to let us use some of the land to the north there where the old compost site was, but I don't know if that maybe that's another discussion. But so we're recycling Evanston's trees right at this moment, at this time, and have been in the past. The products that we'll be getting, the raw material will be logs, brush, chips, and that's classified, as Scott said, wood waste. The IEPA classified yard waste as grass and leaves, and those are taken to a facility, generally ground up, windrowed, or they put them in a static pile and left there for 3-4 months, screened, and then made into compost, and that would be brought back to the site and sold to the contractors. And it's a good eco-friendly way to utilize this and keep it fermented.
So then, just so I'm sure I understand this, so the yard waste that consists of grass clippings and leaves simply arrives by truck or whatever at this proposed facility. It only stays there for 24 hours or less, and then it goes somewhere else.
Correct.
Okay. Whereas the wood that arrives, the woody material, is chipped down or whatever.
We would be
phrase you
asking
use.
that we could grind it down into a smaller size, and then that goes to, we have a couple manufacturing sites where we run it through big grinding machines and make mulch out of that.
Oh, so that's also done off the proposed
Yeah,
site?
the only thing we would be a small chipper grinder at the proposed site to allow us to put more. Brush takes up a lot of space and it's not real heavy, so we get about a 5-to-1 reduction. Rather than have 5 big trucks going back and forth on the highway, we can do a little processing there and then take it to one of our bigger sites. This site doesn't have the size to be, turning into a big manufacturing site. We're hoping to have about 12 to 15 bins on site where we sell different products, mainly mulch, some soil products, and some aggregates of sand and gravel. And then we'd have a contained bin where we'd house the yard waste, the leaves and grass.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Sure. I think the important thing is to understand that distinction, even though it's landscapers collect brush and tree limbs and things like that, that's a different distinction than landscape yard waste, which is the transfer station. So that's exclusively leaves and grass and things of that nature, where wood waste is totally different. You follow me on that? Does that explain it?
At least in accordance with the IEPA. That's,
I want you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and I asked that question. I said, if you have brush, I was downstate with a group, and I said, how can you, branches many times have leaves in them, and wood chips have, from a lot of times you're trimming live branches and a tree that needs to come down that may be alive. And they said, well, the grass is has a stronger issue because of odors, and leaves just came under that category too. So grass and leaves are EPA regulated, and wood waste is wood chips, brush, and logs. And the chips and brush could have leaves on them. So it's a little bit of a gray area there, but.
And so the woody material is not regulated
Correct.
by the IEPA?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Else? I noticed that the proposed definition incorporates the Illinois statutory provision defining yard waste, and as you've pointed out, that doesn't include wood waste or wood chips. So it seems to me we need to add that to the definition if we are going to authorize what's been proposed tonight. It specifically, as you pointed out, it defines clippings and things like that. Does that make sense to the board?
There we go. Wood waste is unregulated.
Correct.
Okay.
It's not in the definition, and we've incorporated the state definition, so we could add just the phrase "and wood waste."
That would be acceptable to us.
That work for you?
Yes. Just anything over 2.5 inches becomes timber. And so they didn't want to regulate lumber yards and things of that nature by including wood waste in it, just as a side.
Something that I would ask, that the yard waste has to be removed within a 24-hour period. The wood waste would be impractical to try to get every little branch and wood chip out every single day, and that doesn't propose any odorous issues and things of that nature. So as long as we're not on the same restrictive...
What period
well-
would you think appropriate for wood waste?
I would think weekly that we would have any, we'll have a separate bin for chips and a separate bin for logs and brush, and they'll be taken out as that fills up. So when we get and we have a truck that holds 80 yards, so it's pretty big. So when that bin is filled up and it'll hold about 80 yards, it'll be hauled off for 60 or 70 yards. So no more than a week, I think comfortably say.
Mr. Ford?
Is the point that yard waste rots, decomposes, and wood doesn't?
Well, it's every organic, as soon as you put it on the ground, it starts to go through a composting stage. I think the EPA has, so many regulations and not enough staff members, not enough funding. They chose that the lesser of the two evils. So they said wood waste. There's so many contractors, tree contractors, landscapers that have that debris in their yard. Trying to monitor that is kind of beyond their resources currently. The yard waste, which is when you're dealing with grass, we've all you see old dead grass. It has some strong odors to it. So.
Mr. Chairman, what I'm thinking is the way the amendment is written now, it speaks of landscape waste remaining on site no longer than 24 hours. It seems to me that maybe we could include wood waste, but we don't need to specify a time.
I think that's correct because it can be done in the special use hearing.
Exactly. Yeah, that too.
And I suggest also not only add wood waste to the definition, but take the regulatory provision, which is the time period, and put it in the special use rather than in the definition, because people looking for regulations don't look for them in definitions. So it would be customary to draft it with the regulation in Section 3 instead of Section 2 of the proposed ordinance.
May I make a comment?
Yeah.
In our landscape yard in Skokie, after the wood waste is processed and brought down to a mulch or a chip, per se, we've had this material in our bins for over a year. And what actually happens is it does not decompose, it does not create the smell that grass and leaves would, per se. As a matter of fact, it gets a richer color as time goes on. So actually, as the product sits longer, it actually becomes more favorable for the landscape setting, per se. So as far as, I just want to make sure that everybody understands the distinction of wood waste is totally different than the distinction of the IEPA's definition of yard waste, which is grass and leaves.
Anything else from board members? Anything from the general public? Please come forward and identify yourself, and if you're going to give testimony, we'll give you the oath of.
No, I'm not here to oppose or support this. I support the general idea of composting, but what I am here simply is, I'm Debbie Hillman, sorry. I was a professional gardener for 25 years, and now I work on food and farm policy. And I just wanted to alert the Plan Commission and anybody else that our own state representative, Robin Gable, is now sponsoring a bill on urban composting. And the bill is to identify small operations that will not need permitting. So I don't know what your business, these small operations would not be allowed to accept tipping fees. So I don't know what the business model is in terms of the tipping fees versus the sales. So I don't know whether this would apply, but I just wanted to alert that this is happening in Springfield now.
Ms. Hillman, thank you. Anyone else have comments? Is there a motion?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yes. Move, are we recommending this to council? Yes. Recommending to council the proposed definition with the chairman's revisions.
And my revisions
to
are...
insert a reference to wood waste and to remove the regulatory language to the special use provisions.
So wood waste would be added at the end, and the phrase that starts yard/landscape waste would appear after, in section 3, after the phrase yard waste transfer facility, and then you'd add wording where the yard landscape waste shall remain on site and track what's there. And it'll be easier to interpret. Is there discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
It is unanimously recommended.
We don't need to read whether it reads any
Thank you, Commissioners.
Nobody did. I'll second it.
Seth second. That brings us to text amendment to the zoning ordinance 13 PLND 0018. And this is a consideration of a text amendment relating to indoor recreational facilities as permitted in special uses.
Following an aldermanic reference for a text amendment, both city staff and the zoning committee of the Plan Commission recommend to change the current definition for commercial indoor recreation facilities by removing the term commercial so that it just reads as indoor recreation facilities, and also change the land use regulations to allow them as a special use in the I-2 industrial district. This is proposed with two interested parties that hope to establish such facilities within the city. Current regulations permit these uses in the C and D districts and allow them as special uses in the B and M districts. And from a land use standpoint, the I-2 district is oftentimes substantially similar to the M districts. Now, the two potentially interested parties are looking at doing fairly different activities that can give you and I can give you an overview of what they are anticipating doing. One facility is looking to locate in an I-2 district on Dempster Street between Dodge and Hartree, and the facility would be utilized by the Evanston Soccer Association, which is a non-commercial entity, hence the removal of the word commercial. The other possible facility would be on Oakton Street, and it would be new construction of a bubble-type facility that would feature multiple indoor sports fields, soccer, lacrosse, baseball, and the idea is that it could be rented out to different groups or individuals for those activities. Now, we are recommending it as a special use because there potentially could be some I-2 sites that would not be recommended for this type of use, given that there could be children involved or given the intensity of adjacent uses. But there are a large number of I-2 sites throughout the city that have low impact uses or uses that would be favorable to be adjacent to such a use. Included in your packet was information from one of the potential users, just to give you an idea of what sort of impact that would have, and given the other uses that are adjacent. And with that, I believe that applicant.
Is there an applicant here for, or anyone who wishes to speak to the text amendment involving indoor recreational facilities?
Question, where on Oakton is the bubble proposed for? What property?
It is all the way on the west side of the city.
It's behind Gordon's Foods.
I didn't see that in the packet anywhere. Is that in there?
It's in the application for a text amendment.
Last survey, but
Is that
I'm
in
not
the, is
sure
that in the
that-
PDF? Did you print the PDF?
It says the address, approximately empty lot behind Gordon Foods.
And at the subcommittee meeting,
Yeah.
the applicant was present and said behind Gordon Foods.
Oh, okay, there it is.
So I
I'm sorry, it's all
conclude
the way through
it's
the-
behind Gordon Foods. Is there any discussion?
Well, a question, I guess. And I guess it's addressed to you, Mr. Chairman. At the meeting, at the zoning committee meeting, you detected an inconsistency or an incompatibility between the language as it had been proposed and the language defining, it may have been cultural centers or community centers or something like that.
It was eliminated.
And you're
with
satisfied that this amendment solves your problem?
the change, the elimination of the word commercial
That
solves the
solves
problem.
your problem?
Yeah. No more circular definition.
Well, then I would move to recommend the change as presented.
Go ahead.
Excuse me. This actually doesn't go to the substance of the text amendment, but a question. Since the word bubble is used, I'm wondering, is that a dome? What is a bubble?
It is a dome structure, and it is not the typical hard material walls that you would think of.
Inflated.
It's inflatable, but it is a large structure that has a high roof, which allows for these indoor recreation facilities. It's not anything that Evanston currently has, but there are a few facilities throughout the suburbs that are similar.
The closest one I know of is in Highland Park, adjacent to Skokie Highway, maybe near Park Avenue or the intersection beyond.
On the east side.
If I could just add, excuse me, the Northwestern University football indoor practice field currently up on Ashland north of Central is probably the closest thing we have to what this is proposed to be. Not exactly, but it's probably the closest thing we have. If you've seen that, it's sort of tucked away in almost in Wilmette, but not quite.
Okay, so any safety issues would be addressed in the building permitting process?
Absolutely. They would have to adhere to all the life safety issues and the building code. Our building staff and fire department are well aware of it and will do all the appropriate things necessary.
Okay, thank you.
As a follow-up to that, how safe are these in high winds?
I think they're very safe, from what I've read about them. The question came up with the approval in Highland Park. And I think, I don't know of any problems with them. And you're right, there's a frame.
Right.
So it doesn't collapse on the people. Let me ask staff to address the the one standard that applies, which is that the proposed amendment is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan.
It does. It is compatible with the goals of the comprehensive general plan. It would promote new businesses and adaptive reuses of existing properties, and promote activities that are compatible with surrounding properties given the special use process.
Any other questions or discussion? Is there a motion?
So move.
And it was seconded, I guess.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. It is unanimously recommended. I'd like to go back to the prior case. The relevant standard, I'm a little asleep at the switch tonight. The relevant standard is whether the amendment is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive general plan as adopted and amended from time to time. There was specific testimony as to sections of the plan that would apply, and I think that's sufficient to show that it meets the standards. Since I didn't manage to figure that out before we voted, is that acceptable to the commission?
It is.
It is.
The record should show all commissioners nodded their heads or made utterances to show agreement. That brings us to committee reports. That brings us to adjournment.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I could just remind members who were at our comprehensive plan committee and also tell members who weren't there, tomorrow night at Lincoln School on Main Street will be the first public meeting of the Main Street Station Transit-Oriented Development Study, which is being mostly funded by the Regional Transportation Authority and also partly funded by the City of Evanston. So this will be at 7 o'clock tomorrow night at Lincoln School in the auditorium multipurpose room. So we certainly invite everyone, as well as everyone watching on television, to this meeting. We think it'll be a great kickoff event.
Could you just very briefly describe the process?
Yes, certainly. The process is such that there is a study underway by Parsons Brinkerhoff and a number of subcontractors focusing on the Main Street corridor and Chicago Avenue corridor. And their principal focus is looking at the CTA station and the Metro station and access points, both pedestrian, bike, and auto connections to it, as well as bus connections, certainly. And they're also looking very closely at transit-oriented development opportunities in both corridors that can maximize the tremendous advantages of having those two stations with two rapid transit lines coming into that location. That's one of the few places outside downtown Chicago and Davis Street, and I think there's one in Oak Park where that actually happens. One of the other things that's being examined by the study is the possibility of some way, shape, or form connecting the two stations so it's easier on pedestrians. So that's one of the issues to be looked at.
You said Lincoln School at 7 or 7?
7 p.m. at Lincoln School. The meeting will run from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. It's the first of 3 public meetings, but I think it'll be a very exciting meeting.
Are the 3 public meetings identical meetings, or is this a sequence of 3?
Sequence of 3 that, incrementally will build as the consultants do more of their work and do other forms of interaction with commercial property owners, the community, transit riders, and also, very importantly, the transit agencies themselves. CTA, PACE, Metra, as well as the RTA are very involved in this. And the Union Pacific, I should not leave them out. They're very important.
On a separate subject, you said to those on TV, are we now being broadcast again? Or before, wasn't it just on tape that you could, not on tape, but on hard disk that you can view?
I assumed we were still on television. We'll check to make sure whether we are or not.
I know we're being recorded. I thought you had to click to view.
On to another subject, just to let you guys know, the zoning committee of the Plan Commission meeting for next Wednesday, April 17th, is canceled due to a lack of agenda items.
We don't get to see you, Melissa.
The record should show the commission looks very sad. Is there a motion to adjourn?
What, do I have to make every motion?
You have
Motion
to make.
to adjourn. I did all the motions last time. Okay.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. It is 7:55.
Are you joining one of the?